Hello, this is Michael Hexter, and welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So, this episode I'm calling Netanyahu and Hamas are virtual allies seeking to crush potential space for peace recognition. So, this is an observation about the tactics or the tendencies of religious fundamentalists, and Netanyahu is the representative of religious fundamentalists, and Hamas is a religious fundamentalist organization, and also military organization, so terrorist organization, or and the I'm struck by and also in rage and mourning at how Hamas struck this music festival in southern Israel near Gaza and slaughtered over 200 concert goers there. And that, to me, and these are people who are, while they're not political activists, some of them might have been political activists in their, other incarnations. It was just basically an outdoor rave, which attracts mostly peace-minded people. It's sort of a hippie-ish kind of thing. So, and I mean, there are people who are making this whole that this is sort of an obscene outgrowth. This rave itself was an obscene outgrowth of Israeli imperialism and the cluelessness of these people who are, near Gaza and having this party there in the outdoors and so forth and so on. And that, I mean, there's certainly a striking contrast there that would make, a great movie or something like that. And sort of a morality play in it about these people who were at this rave. But they didn't, as clueless as they were and as insensitive as they were to the location that they were having their party, they didn't deserve to be slaughtered, okay? Or made this symbol for people who are wanting to moralize about that situation, this symbol of the cluelessness of Israel, or the kind of the advantages of being Jewish or non-Palestinian, let's say, because many of the people at the rave were not Palestinian, but or not Jewish. I mean, or some were Israeli, some were from other places, maybe Jewish, maybe not. But anyway, it wasn't strictly Israelis at this party. But anyway, the fact that this is the people who seem to, in terms of the casualties, the people who suffered more were these people who generally, might be open to a peace now kind of, if they were Israeli, a peace now or some sort of a land for peace deal between Israel and Palestine. They would be more likely to be that than many, many other groups. For instance, the settlers on the West Bank, the fanatical settlers. So that these people were so victimized, and they were victims, is a tragedy. It's not as tragic as what's happened to the Palestinians in Gaza for much, much longer, and not just in Gaza, just the Nakba and so forth, and the stealing of Palestinian land over the last 80 years. That's far, far worse. Okay, but two wrongs don't make a right. And in moral terms, but also in political terms, even if it's not a strategic thing for Hamas to have done this for the good, supposedly the good of the Palestinian people in Gaza or everywhere. And what really, strikes me about both of these groups, in other words, Hamas on one hand and the Israeli right on the other hand, is that they are enemies of what I would call the potential space or the social space that would need to open up in Israeli society and also in Palestinian society, and then they would meet, and that they would create through that both a people-to-people process, but also a political process of figuring out how the land between the river and the sea can be justly shared by these peoples, and with enough protection and with sufficient acknowledgement of the hatreds that have developed and might continue to be developed with further actions between these two parties, that the hatreds will be there. Okay, and that they need to be spoken, and they need to be addressed, and the rational basis for those hatreds, because there are rational bases on both sides for some of the hatreds. I mean, for individual families, some Israelis have experienced tragedy due to Palestinian terrorist attacks, and or you could say, from the point of view, am I being too pro-Israeli when I say terror? I mean, the point was to, a much less powerful group of people militarily was trying to disrupt and strike terror in different forms in Israeli society, was trying to, but this has only created in Israel a fanatical, there is the alternatives to, within Israeli society, they've gone away from the peace process, okay? Now, it's not a direct one-to-one correlation between terrorist attacks and the reinforcement of the far right in Israel. And I'm not blaming, the Palestinians, or even blaming the terrorists who committed those attacks for Israel had a choice to respond to those in a different way. So I'm not absolving Israel of, it's not they were not forced to become Judeo-fascists, okay? But the closing down, though, of this potential space, it's not, that has to be a component of peace and security in the Levant, in Palestine, Israel-Palestine, and that space needs to open up in people's minds too. So the idea of potential space is that it's a place where things can happen that are unexpected, but not necessarily dangerous, just where you're open to possibility. Okay, I mean, some of the possibilities might be threatening, but you want to. It can open up best in an environment of safety, okay? An environment of military confrontation and military oppression, that space is almost entirely closed. Or, I mean, people could conceive of saying, well, we need that space in order to stop fighting each other. We need to open that potential space. But the potential space and the space is, this is another way to talk about the talion cycle that I was talking about a couple videos ago. And the cycle of hatred, you could say, or of hating each other, and being aggressive, and aggression, tit for tat. Everything is a tit for tat. You're expecting the other to respond with equal aggression to you. So you could say fight or flight, or it's mostly fight in this case. But anyway, but it's a state of mind that is not open to this potential space. So overcoming the talion cycle involves opening up a potential space. So This sounds to people who consider themselves hard-headed military people and, and security minded and so forth and so on. This sounds hippie-ish and so forth and so on. Well, look, literally, Hamas, maybe intentionally, we don't know yet. Maybe they did intentionally target this festival. I don't know what their logic was, what they thought they were doing in targeting it. But it is kind of the cultural expression of what, on a political level, is about allowing for uncertainty in a relationship, but in a way that is not about immediate threat. So it has to be established. I think this cannot happen without significant international intervention. Well, one of the international interventions is U.S. conditioning its aid to Israel and conditioning its support for Israel, and which is just, it's just the basic first step. It's not the solution to everything, because it has inflated the grandiosity of people like Netanyahu, the sense of and in fact, and he acts as if he even has power over the U.S. president and so on and so on, that he can manipulate U.S. politics in part through Israelist Zionist organizations or the Israel lobby in the United States, and he feels like that he can jerk the U.S. politics around, not just him, other Israeli leaders, but anyway, but that is also part of the locking in of a flattened discourse, a flattened place, a place where there's no space, where the only reaction is the predictable one of tit for tat and the cycle of violence, and only thinking about the other as either a source of oppression, of military occupation, essentially, and apartheid, the ruling class of an apartheid state, the terrorists, the unwashed, or the people who are below, the people who are of another race, the brown people. What do you want to say? In the Middle East, in the case of a Jewish state, the Muslim people who are the supposed antagonists of Jews in the Middle East, so forth and so on. So anyway, so that mentality of hierarchy and dominance and sadistic hierarchical bullying, essentially, and authoritarianism, which so this is also something that we see some of the supporters I'm seeing on social media. Some of the supporters, so it's very saddening to me, but the pro-Palestinian lobby, or the pro-Palestinian movement, the BDS movement, so forth and so on, it's been, some groups within it have been exposed by these incidents in the last few days as being not understanding, in my opinion, that this process needs to be about opening a potential space, that the killing of civilians is a grave step in the wrong direction on both sides. So Israel and Hamas, or the dispossession of Palestinians living in their homes is great. It's all, they are our, even though they're not, you can't say they're equal or there's equal oppression on one side or the other. The Israelis are clearly oppressing the Palestinians. They're clearly a settler colonial overclass, so to speak, or whatever, over the Palestinians, and they think of themselves as better than, so forth and so on, and that and the state allows them, through its laws, the state of Israel allows them to think that way and to act that way. So, but the there's not an equality of those two things, but still they reinforce each other. So and they're both united. So they're allies, and maybe we will discover that this enormous intelligence failure. So there are so many people who are wondering how the hell did they miss these very elaborate attacks. And supposedly Israel has this wonderful intelligence apparatus. So there may be some scandals that are discovered that reveal a actual alliance, but I don't know for sure if but they're certainly I don't think they need an actual alliance. I mean, they would. I think we'd have to figure out how the failures occurred, how the Israeli journalists would need to, or other journalists would need to discover how this happened, but or whatever internal reviews. I don't know. They probably can't be relied upon. But anyway, basically this alliance then doesn't really need a line of communication, because of the symbiosis of these groups is that there could be one, but is about a similar hostility to an empathic, cooperative, potential space. In other words, the space for growth, for human growth, for people being their better people, exceeding your expectations, and not slating them into what you think being their worst, who they are, your worst imagination about the other. In other words, the Palestinians as being vicious terrorists, so and so on, and then the Israeli being vicious, jackbooted oppressors of your people. So anyway, but that there needs to be reality. It's not just the mental process, but there needs to be steps in the direction of creating that space. So where then things like the division of land and so forth, so on, and resources and political arrangements can be made in that region. But right now, we're not near that. Anyway, so I just wanted to offer this as another perspective on the conflict there, and I'm quite sure in the days to come there'll be, I imagine, some pretty awful things happening in that region, and I'm hoping for the best, but my expectations are quite low. Anyway, I look forward to talking to you about this in the comments. If you have a reaction to what I've said of any kind, and then also if you thought this video was helpful at all, please like it, and please subscribe to Politics 2100. Thanks.